In Scientology, the process of indoctrination is meticulously structured to suppress and redirect a person's natural critical thinking, eventually leading them to police their own thoughts and attack their own doubts about Scientology. This process leverages several techniques, including auditing, specific courses, and doctrine created by L. Ron Hubbard, all of which subtly dismantle a person's independent reasoning capabilities and replace them with the rigid logic of the church. Let's break down the mechanisms involved. 1. The gradual suppression of critical thinking. Critical thinking is dismantled primarily through thought reform processes, where new ideas are introduced in ways that override previous beliefs. In Scientology, this often starts with the claim that Hubbard's techniques are universally correct, and any doubt is a sign of personal failing or mental misalignment. Here's how this happens. Auditing and the EMeter. Auditing sessions, where a person is hooked up to the EMeter, a low-voltage device that measures skin resistance, play a central role in this thought reformation. The EMeter is presented as an objective measure of truth, meaning the needle's movement supposedly reveals hidden thoughts, past trauma, or doubts. The electrical parameters of the device, such as its very low voltage, about 5 volts or less, and minimal current of 0.15 to 1.5 milliamps, aren't powerful enough to physically affect the person. However, the psychological effect is profound. When the EMeter indicates reactivity, needle movement, the subject is encouraged to view this as proof that their subconscious mind harbors unresolved issues or overts, misdeeds. As the person becomes accustomed to this framework, they start to distrust their own thoughts and perceptions, instead relying on the auditing process to tell them what is true. If the EMeter reacts, the person is conditioned to believe they are guilty of something, even if they initially don't recognize it. This encourages the person to search deeper within themselves for faults that may not even exist. Over time, this trains them to distrust any thought that diverges from the prescribed Scientology worldview. Hubbards Doctrine of Suppression. A key text in this indoctrination is Hubbard's theory of suppressive persons, SPs, which is introduced in courses like the PTS-SP course, Potential Trouble Source, Suppressive Person course. Hubbard defines a suppressive person as someone who works against Scientology and whose negativity can infect others, causing them to become a potential trouble source. This idea conditions Scientologists to view criticism of the church or Hubbard as inherently evil or dangerous. More importantly, it teaches them that any internal doubts about Scientology are signs that they've been influenced by a suppressive individual or force. This doctrine weaponizes a person's own critical faculties against them. If a Scientologist begins to question the practices or beliefs of the church, they are taught to see this as evidence that they've been influenced by suppression, rather than a legitimate exercise of critical thinking. Quote by Hubbard, "A suppressive person isn't interested in good news, only bad. So look around and see who's talking bad about Scientology. You've probably just found your suppressive person." Hubbard, Introduction to Scientology Ethics, 1968. This concept of good news versus bad news sets up a binary framework where anything negative about Scientology is viewed as malicious. By internalizing this, the person learns to suppress their own critical thoughts, labeling them as dangerous, suppressive, or harmful. Courses and techniques that reinforce thought control. The TRs, training routines. One of the first courses most Scientologists take is the TR's training routines. These drills aim to improve a person's ability to control communication, but they also serve to suppress critical thought. For example, in TR0, confronting, a participant must sit perfectly still and silent, staring at another person without reacting for extended periods of time. The goal is to teach the individual to withstand any external pressure without flinching or showing discomfort. This seemingly simple drill teaches obedience and submission. Over time, it desensitizes the person to external stimuli, including criticism or challenging ideas. The person learns to block out dissent, both from external sources and their own mind, as this process also introduces control over their own emotional and mental reactions. The false data stripping procedure. Hubbard introduced false data stripping, a technique where Scientologists are told to identify and strip away any incorrect or non-Scientology ideas they might hold. The procedure involves finding the false data in a person's mind that is preventing them from fully accepting Scientology's teachings. This technique leads them to believe that any thoughts inconsistent with Hubbard's teachings are faulty and need to be corrected. Through repetition, they come to distrust their own judgment. Over time, this creates a feedback loop where any critical thought about the church is automatically treated as false and needs to be suppressed. Security checks, sec checks. Another tool of indoctrination is the security checks, check, which is similar to an interrogation using the EMeter. Here, a person is grilled with probing personal questions designed to uncover transgressions, dishonesty, or hidden doubts. The fear of being labeled a potential trouble source, PTS, or having one's deepest secrets exposed leads to self-censorship. Individuals are conditioned to monitor their own thoughts and behaviors to avoid being reported for disloyalty or suppressive tendencies. Quote by Hubbard on the sec checks: "When you run into an area in which the PC, pre-clear, is doing wrong, the needle will show it." Hubbard, HCO Bulletin of 15th of September 1961. The dangerous consequences. The long-term effect of these processes is a state where the person becomes their own censor. Every time a critical thought arises, they've been conditioned to see it as proof of their own reactive mind, or a sign of external suppression. They actively suppress these thoughts, which are reinterpreted as dangerous, preventing any rational questioning of Scientology's doctrines. This self-policing behavior extends to how they treat others, too. Once indoctrinated, Scientologists view any criticism of the church, either from within or outside, as a threat that must be neutralized. Those who voice doubts are labeled as SPs or PTS and subjected to shunning or retribution. In this way, critical thinking is weaponized against the individual and others, creating a closed-loop system where dissent is virtually impossible. This is dangerous because it creates a totalizing belief system where any deviation from the official doctrine is immediately suspect, and the church gains full control over a person's perceptions, emotions, and actions. Conclusion. Scientology uses a combination of auditing, doctrinal teachings about suppression, security checks, and false data stripping to create an environment where natural skepticism and critical thinking are seen as weaknesses or threats. Over time, individuals are trained to police their own thoughts, dismiss any internal or external doubts, and view any critical views of Scientology as dangerous or evil. This form of mental conditioning traps people in the ideology, making it extremely difficult for them to break free from the church's control.
Audiences know what to expect, and that is all they are prepared to believe in.
Experimenting on people here.
I don't know, boss. How do you believe a crazy guy?
That's the beauty of it, isn't it? Crazy people, they're the perfect subjects. They talk, nobody listens.